Hello and welcome to the Gothic Color channel. This video is to introduce my 10’s design with information on how you can use it to make a reversible summer holiday dress using 2 meters of jersey fabric. You can also just use 1 meter to make a non-reversible version. As usual with my videos, I am going to start by talking about my design and then move on to the sewing. In the description box below I have links to the different sections of the video, so you can easily skip ahead to the section you are most interested in. So if you are only interested in the construction of the dress, then go ahead and skip to that part. The 10’s design that is used in this video is one of 3 designs inspired by Art Nouveau and Art Deco. The other 2 designs are called the 10’s and the 20’s, referring to the early decades of the 1900s. Each of these 3 designs comes in a number of color variations and can all be used to make the dress I will be showing you in this video. However, to keep the length of the video to a reasonable amount, I will just concentrate on showing you the 10’s design. I have already uploaded a video on how to make a summer top using the 10’s design, and I will be uploading one more video in the next few months showcasing the 20’s design and showing you another piece of clothing you can make with 1 meter of fabric. Links to the respective designs and color variations can be found in the description box of each video. The 10’s design is specifically inspired by Art Deco enamel and stained glass designs. So let me start by showing you the samplers that I received from my 2 shops. On the left are those from fashionformula.com and on the right from spoonflower.com. Starting with the light colors, we have a colored enamel effect design on light green. There is a considerable difference between the samplers on this one. The Fashion Formula version is a much lighter and yellower green than the Spoonflower sampler. Then we have the design on a light aqua blue. The Spoonflower sampler is a bit more saturated and greener in hue than the Fashion Formula one, but they are pretty close. Next we have the lilac pink version. The pink on the sampler from Spoonflower is a bit warmer than that on the Fashion Formula one. Then we have the design on peach pink. Here the sampler from Spoonflower is a little pinkier and lighter than the Fashion Formula one, which is more of a pastel orange color. Moving on to a different take on the design and the background colors. Here the design has a monochrome clear form in grey and white, which is set against dusky colors. First you can see the design on dusky green. The Fashion Formula sampler is a bit brighter in color. The Spoonflower one is more grey in tone. This is also the case with the next colors. Here the design on dusky blue, the design on dusky purple, and on dusky pink. Next we have the design on dark colors. Here the design has an antique gold foil effect. Just to be clear, gold effect refers to the color shading. These fabrics do not have any metallic colors on them. Firstly, we have the design on dark green. The green on the Fashion Formula sampler is richer and warmer than on the Spoonflower one. Next, we have the design on blue. The colors on the Spoonflower version have a red undertone to them. Then we move on to the dark red. The Fashion Formula sampler is richer and warmer than what I could get from Spoonflower, so I decided to make 2 different reds available on Spoonflower, one a bright red and one a burgundy one. So together with the Fashion Formula version, there are in essence 3 options for this color. Finally, we have the design on black. The colors on the Fashion Formula version are a bit more vibrant than on the Spoonflower one. Do note, however, that the fabric printed can also affect the appearance of the colors, so it is always a good idea to get a sampler on your preferred fabric before committing to buying a whole meter. So let's talk about materials and measurements. For this reversible dress, I used 1 meter of the 10’s design on dusky pink and 1 meter of the same design on peach pink. So a total of 2 meters of fabric. If you would like to make this, you can also use just 1 meter of any design to make a non-reversible version. If you plan to make this dress strapless and choose a stretchy fabric, the width of the fabric will need to be at least a few centimeters wider than either your chest or hip measurement, whichever is the biggest. If you choose a non-stretchy fabric, you would be best to choose one with at least an extra 10 centimeters, about 4 inches, in width. if you want to make the dress with straps, then you will also need to factor that into the width. Other than this, you can go as wider as you like, as the fabric will be gathered in with an elastic anyway. The fabric I used is a single cotton elastane jersey, 90% cotton and 10% elastane, that is 135 centimeters, about 53 inches wide. I used 130 centimeters, about 51 inches of this for the dress to fit loosely on measurements of 92 centimeters or 36 inches chest, 82 centimeters or 32 inches waist, and 104 centimeters or 41 inches hips. The extra 5 centimeters, 2 inches, I used to make the shoulder straps. Regarding other materials, I used 1 centimeter, that is 3/8 of an inch wide buttons for attaching the straps to the dress, matching thread to the two fabrics, and some buttonhole elastic. The needles that I used on my sewing machine for this fabric were jersey needles size 70. I also used a walking foot on my sewing machine to deal with the stretchy fabrics. Moving on to the construction of the dress. So first things first, I washed and pressed the fabric to make sure it shrunk to its final size. Then I looked at the design on each fabric to decide where the pattern matched, while allowing for a strip to be cut for use as a strap. As I wanted the straps to be more substantial than rouleau straps, I decided to use some of the excess white sections from our printout fabrics to make a backing for my straps, so I could take full advantage of the printout of the fabric. Here I am sewing one of the straps with some white backing before turning the straps the right way out, as you can see here. I then pressed the straps and top stitched them so they lie flat. At this point in the construction, I was planning to have one strap per fabric color that would be worn in a halter neck style, attached to the dress at 2 points on the front. However, as you will see, I changed this at a later stage. Once I had both colored straps top stitched, I left them aside and started working on the dress. The main construction of the dress is very simple. Basically, you make a tube out of the fabric and attach an elastic on one end. This is particularly straightforward if you are making the non-reversible version of this dress. I, however, appeared to like making my life difficult, so I decided to make the reversible version, which has its own little challenges. I will point out the issues I came across so you can take special care should you decide to make this dress. So once I sewed each fabric closed into a tube, I needed to attach the two fabrics together at the top part of the dress, making sure that the design on the fabrics was the right way up, and for the sake of consistency at the same level, I sewed the fabrics together using a stretch stitch. I then understitched the seam allowances to each side of the dress so that it could sit nicely once the elastic was attached. Then I sewed the buttonhole elastic close, after measuring the amount I needed for it to stretch comfortably over the bust and under the armpits. Then came the rather tricky business of trying to place the elastic whilst making sure I had a buttonhole on each side where I wanted the buttons to go relative to the design. So after a fair bit of fiddling, I managed to get it into a decent position for this. I carefully cut the fabric and sewed up the buttonholes by hand. I also basted by hand the elastic into position using a wide stretch stitch. This made the final sewing on the sewing machine much easier, as I did not have to constantly check on the position of the two fabrics against the elastic every few minutes. I do recommend taking the time on this, as it is tricky sewing an elastic sandwiched between two pieces of stretchy fabric, especially when you want both sides to look neat. The stitch I used for the elastic was a zigzag stitch. You will need to set your sewing machine at a longer length than you might think for this stitch, because you will be stretching the elastic while sewing, which means that when the elastic is relaxed, the zigzag stitches will come closer together anyway. I set my machine on 3.5 length. Next, I moved on to the hem. This again is simple in terms of construction, but when doing the reversible version of this dress, you need to take the time and check with fittings in order to make sure that both hems sit parallel to each other, so that you don't end up with the fabric that you're wearing on the inside peeking out from under the fabric that you're wearing on the outside, whichever way around you choose to wear the dress. Okay, so moving back to the straps. After trying on the dress for comfort, I realized that the weight of the two fabrics was a bit too much for the elastic, and that if I used the straps as a halter neck, the dress would eventually start to sag at the back. Since I had enough length with the straps, I decided to add a third button at the back, making the straps into a sporty V-neck at the back. You could, of course, just cut each strap in half and have two regular straps for each side of the dress. At any rate, here is what I did. I folded and sewed up the center of each strap into a rhombus and did some extra top stitching to add strength to the straps, since the fabric I was using was a stretch fabric. I then sewed up and strengthened the ends of the strap where the button would go. Here you see me sewing on the buttons. And here are the straps finished. So there you go. This is a simple summer holiday dress that can be worn over your swimsuit if you're going to the beach, and can also be accessorized to go out in the evening. So this is the dusky pink side, and here is the peach side. And you can even not bother with the straps and use it as a skirt. In my next video, I will be making a fun shirred summer top using my 10’s design. In the meantime, do subscribe and click on notifications so you get notified of my next upload. Goodbye!